I want to bring the generational argument home now because I think it's the most important question this entire 5 episode arc has been building toward. We talked about the generations that came before, the ones who arrived with nothing, who worked in conditions that would horrify us, who built communities and families and institutions inside a system that was designed against them, who passed forward not the primarily money, but the way of seeing, a framework for meeting difficulty, a set of values about their life is for and what you owe to the people around you. Think about what that required of them. It required knowing that effort they were making was not going to pay off primarily in their own lifetime. The mutual aid society they built was going to serve their children and grandchildren more than them. The union they organized was going to benefit the workers who came after. The credit union they started was going to matter into the institution that outlasted them by decades. They were making investments with a time horizon that extended beyond their own lives. They were building for people they had not met yet, for the generation that would inherit whatever they managed to create. That is the specific kind of thinking that individualism cannot produce. You do not sacrifice and organize and show up for decades for your own immediate benefit. You do it because you understand yourself as a part of something larger than yourself. A family, a community, a tradition, a chain of people passing something forward that matters. Now the question is yours. What are you passing forward? I do not mean this as a guilt question. I mean it as the most clarifying question available. Because when you ask it honestly, it cuts through an enormous amount of noise. It cuts through the anxiety about whether you have the right house or the right car or the right financial position. It cuts through the comparison trap, the exhausting measurement of your life against curated highlight reel of other people's best moments. It cuts through the political tribalism that keeps working people fighting each other instead of building anything together. When you ask what you are passing forward, the answer clarifies what actually matters. Not your net worth, not your career title, not the size of your home or the brand of your car. Whether the people who came after you inherit a stronger community or a weaker one. Whether they inherit a family that knew how to be present for each other under pressure or one that fractured when the math got hard. Whether they inherit a set of values that equips them to face difficulty with the dignity or set of strategies for avoiding difficulty that turns out to be impossible to avoid. I think about the people before us who built during the Depression, who built during the wars, who built during famines and displacements, economic upheavals that make the current housing crisis look manageable. They did not know whether their efforts were going to produce the outcome they were working toward. They did not have that certainty. What they had was the conviction that the building was the right thing to do, regardless of whether the system cooperated. That showing up for the people beside them was the right thing to do, regardless whether the institutions around them were functioning. That passing something worth having to the next generation was the right thing to do, regardless of whether they would live to see it received. That conviction is available to you. It does not require the math to work first. It does not require the system to be fixed first. It does not require perfect conditions or favorable political environment or housing market that cooperates. It requires a decision that is what you are doing. This is who you are. This is what you are passing forward. And then showing up for it every day with whatever you have. I want to add one more dimension to the generational argument before we move on. Because I think it is easy to hear this and feel the weight of it as an obligation, as if the generation before you set a standard you are now obligated to meet. And I want to reframe that. What generations before you actually demonstrated is that human beings have enormous capacity to build and sustain meaningful lives under conditions that look from the outside like they should make meaningful life impossible. Not because they were superhuman, because they were human, fully, completely human, with the same fears and doubts and exhaustion and financial pressure and retaliation difficulty that you carry. The difference was not that their conditions were better. In most cases, they were worse. The difference was that they had a framework, usually coming from faith, from community, from cultural tradition, that gave them a reason to keep building, even when the building was hard and outcome was uncertain. That the framework is what they pass forward, and it is available to you, not as a burden, as a resource, as the knowledge tested across generations of people who faced worse than you are facing, that it is possible to build something real and pass something worth having to the generation after you. Regardless of what economic system is doing around you while you do it. A close friend of mine has a daughter. I was saying this story. She was maybe 3 years old when he told me the story. He had come home from a long day, not a bad day, just long. And she was sitting at the kitchen table drawing something. She looked up, and when he walked in and held up the picture, it was not identifiable as anything, just colors and lines, the way the 3-year-old draws. But the look on her face when she was held up was the look of someone who had made something and wanted the person that they loved the most to see it. He sat down next to her and he told me that he started crying on the drive home from visiting me that same week. Not because he was sad, because he realized in that moment exactly what he was working toward and exactly what the financial pressure was putting at risk. Not his retirement account, not his career. That moment, the ability to be present and unhurried and fully there for the child who loves you without reservation. He said, I'm not working to afford the house. I'm working to afford that. That is what we are passing forward. Not the house, the moment, the presence, the quality of the people we become for the people who need us.